Big stories facing the Trump team's foreign policy agenda, and you are looking live now at the State Department. In a moment, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will begin speaking. The topic there is religious freedom, but he could offer a lot of other news on several different issues watching over the weekend. We're watching that closely. We'll bring you news from it, headlines from the State Department when that happens. First, though, breaking news on the North Korea matter now. President Trump confirming reports that right now a top North Korean official is on his way to the U.S. There is renewed hope that the June 12th summit will take place. So hang on, everybody. It's not over yet. I'm Bill Hammer, live inside of America's Newsroom. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. I know you did. How you doing?
Good morning. Welcome back to you. Saw a bit of you over the weekend. Fox News Sunday action.
Yep. Call Hammer. It's the holiday.
Okay.
Well, we had a great program, and thanks to our team down in Washington with Chris Wallace.
We'll see some of that coming up.
Stuff. Right.
Meanwhile, I'm Sandra Smith. This visit from former North Korea spy chief Kim Yong-chol, just the latest indication that the historic meeting in Singapore could be close to getting back on track. And now there are reports that the White House has decided to hold off on hitting North Korea with a new round of sanctions.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts begins our coverage on a brand new week. Short week, nonetheless, on a Tuesday. John, good morning. Where do we stand?
You know, even in a short week, Bill, you can still get a lot done. We're going to be hearing a lot more about the potential for this June 12th summit to be back on throughout the day today. A White House official told me a short time ago that June 12th is, quote, looking good. Still not back on track yet, but a lot closer than it was last week when the president sent that letter to Kim Jong-un saying, by the way, our summit's going to be canceled. You mentioned it at the top of this. One of North Korea's highest ranking officials, Kim Yong-chol, who together with Kim Jong-un's sister led the delegation from North Korea to the Pyeongchang Olympics earlier this year. He's seen here walking through the airport in Beijing. He is headed for New York, and he'll be having talks with U.S. officials and Chinese officials in New York. He was also the former spy chief of North Korea. So this fellow really is at the very top of the pecking order there in North Korea. He's also the guy who's in charge of North-South relations between North Korea and South Korea. The president tweeting optimism this morning, saying, quote, we have put together a great team for our talks in North Korea. Meetings are currently taking place concerning summit and more. Kim Yong-chol, the vice chairman of North Korea, heading now to New York. Solid response to my letter. Thank you. Kim Jong-chol would be the highest ranking North Korean official to come to the United States in 18 years. The last time a high-ranking North Korean official came here was back in 2000. One of the leaders of Kim Jong-il's party meeting with President Clinton. That then precipitated a visit of Madeleine Albright, the then Secretary of State, to Pyongyang. There are a couple of U.S. teams that are in Singapore right now for talks with the North Koreans to try to put the summit back on track. Kellyanne Conway talked about that on Fox and Friends this morning. Listen here.
The president sent over two delegations, one for logistics and one for more diplomatic purposes, that are on the ground making the logistic preparations for June 12th. But as the president said, it doesn't happen June 12th. It could happen thereafter. What he's been able to do in such a compressed short amount of time is nothing short of historic and remarkable.
There's been a turnaround in the prospect for talks between the United States and North Korea. There's also been somewhat of a turnaround in the Democratic perception of all of this. You'll remember Democrats heaped criticism on the president last Thursday when he sent that letter to Kim Jong-un canceling the summit. Well, listen to Democrats who are now being almost mildly complimentary of the president. Listen here.
I think it's possible to have a constructive and positive summit, and I certainly prefer President Trump's choice now of diplomacy over threatening fire and fury, and I commend him and Secretary Pompeo for gaining the release of 3 Americans held in North Korea, and recently another American released from Venezuela, and I certainly hope that he is successful.
We're likely not going to hear anything from the president except for tweets until he leaves the White House headed for Nashville, Tennessee this afternoon in the 3 o'clock hour. He's got a big campaign rally tonight at Opryland, so we'll likely hear a lot from him then. But again, Bill, stay tuned because the White House is going to start releasing some more details surrounding whether or not this summit is going to be back on. And again, I'm told it's looking good for June the 12th.
We shall wait. Thank you, John Roberts, leading our coverage there. Thank you, John.
Meanwhile, Israel now retaliating against Hamas after Gaza militants firing more than 25 mortar shells into Israel, further escalating weeks of tension and violent protests. Israel's responded with airstrikes and militant positions on militant positions. Mike Tobin is on the ground over there. Mike, what is happening at this moment?
Well, this is a major escalation, Sandra. We have been watching the active salvos between Israel and Palestinian militants. The sirens have been wailing in the northern end of the Gaza Strip, warning about incoming fire on the Israeli side. And here, about halfway down the Gaza Strip, just a short time ago, the red alert sounded and we saw the Iron Dome defense system activate, and it appeared to have taken a projectile out of the sky. Now, Israeli warplanes have been pounding targets from the northern to the southern end of the Gaza Strip. The IDF now says that more than 35 different targets have been hit. Training camps for both Islamic Jihad and Hamas were hit. A weapons storage facility, maritime targets, a smuggling tunnel that went under the Egyptian border and also under the Israeli border. That was hit. And Israel's claiming that some of the weapons used by Islamic Jihad were supplied by Iran. Here are some of the remnants of one of those Islamic Jihad weapons. This is shrapnel from a mortar that crashed down just outside of a kindergarten on the Israeli side of the border. And just a short time before parents would have dropped off their kids, all of this major, very razor sharp, I should say, metal was flying all around this kindergarten just outside of the playground here. No injuries to report on the Israeli side of the border. Sandra?
Mike, did Hamas launch the mortars?
Well, Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for the mortar attack and said it was in retaliation to an Israeli strike on one of their fighting positions last Sunday that killed 3 Islamic Jihad fighters. But this was a big attack. 25 mortars followed with automatic gunfire. Israel did activate the Iron Dome system and claims to have knocked a number of those projectiles out of the sky, I should note. But still, an attack that size, 25 mortars, Islamic Jihad gets along with Hamas. It is unlikely that they could have or would have done that without the knowledge and or blessing of Hamas. And Hamas, besides the fact that they get along with Islamic Jihad, they have an iron grip on everything that happens inside of the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, despite the Islamic Jihad claim of responsibility, Hamas will be held responsible. Sandra?
Mike Tobin, thanks for your reporting there.
I want to bring in Jack Keane right now, retired 4-star General Chairman for the Institute for Study of War, Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst. How you doing, sir? And wow, there's a lot of things moving on North Korea. The North and the South meet on Saturday. You have a U.S. team that went into North Korea yesterday. A leading North Korean official arrives in the U.S. very soon. I think from your perspective, how do you know Kim's serious about being nuke-free?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think everyone now, China, North Korea, and even South Korea, know that this president is not going to be played after a lot of the shenanigans that's been going on the last couple of weeks. Now, what has happened that's very pivotal, Bill, is yesterday our U.S. delegation met with the North Korean delegation for the first time. And our people right now certainly have fed back to the president's advisors about that meeting. And here's what I think our delegation wanted to see. Is North Korea, when it comes to denuclearization, is this an aspirational thing that they want to do and just partially denuclearize? Or do they really have a plan? Here's what they would want by a plan. One, is there full accounting of all your nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles? Can we see that? Two, are you willing to open up that entire disarming and dismantling process so we have full verification of the entire process? And number three, will we do this in a reasonable amount of time? Are you going to drag this out over many years, way beyond the president's term of office, so that it's more of a promise than it is a delivery of denuclearization?
That's a lot. Do you think Chairman Kim would agree to that before you sit down on June 12th? That's asking an awful lot.
He's likely not going to agree to all of that. So what our delegation is, we'll be looking at another meeting coming up today, probably a meeting as we speak, is our position. We know what it is, complete and verifiable denuclearization. Their position, probably somewhat less than that. Can that be resolved through negotiation? If it can't, I think their recommendation to the president would be delay the summit. If they think it can be resolved through some negotiation and get to some kind of common objective, then I think the summit will be on.
Okay, interesting. I thought the one thing that emerged from Saturday's meeting, Kim is looking for security. He wants to know that he will not be taken out. Was that your read too?
Yeah, his number one concern is not prosperity, not economic. Certainly, that's important to him. I'm not suggesting it's not. But clearly, this has always been about security. Why nuclear weapons? Why ballistic missiles? Why pointing them at the United States? All because he wants his regime to be secure and stay in power. He's a young man, and he's looking out many, many years down the road, and he wants this regime to stay in power. And clearly, that's got to be on the table, and we will have to provide him some kind of guarantor for that as part of our negotiations and our concessions.
Just look at these pictures here on the screen. President Moon of South Korea, he wants this to happen. He's been a strong driving force, General, to make this work. Is he too angered? Eager?
Moon has been a catalyst for the summit. Give him credit for that. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, he's so eager to have it. I really believe he's been papering over the differences that the United States position and also Kim Jong-un's position. And I think now that one of the reasons why this envoy, the chief of his intelligence, vice chairman, is coming to the United States, I think they want to stop talking through South Korea and talk directly to significant advisors to the President of the United States, and that's what's going to happen.
That's very interesting. Thank you, General. Great perspective as always. Jack Keane there in Washington. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good talking to you, Bill.
We were reminded on Sunday by Rudy Giuliani. It took 6 months to figure out the details with Reagan and Gorbachev and Reykjavik, so we could have a ways to go on this, and we'll be patient.
The White House sounds optimistic, and the president's saying if it doesn't happen June 12th, it could happen after that.
Yeah. So we need a lot of luck.
We'll see. And strategy. All right, well, meanwhile, speaking of Rudy Giuliani, supporting President Trump's Spygate allegations.
Nothing wrong with the government doing that. Everything wrong with the government spying on a candidate of the opposition party.
The former mayor saying he believes an FBI informant was planted by the Obama administration to stop the Trump campaign, not to learn about Russian meddling. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here to discuss that.
Also, the president heading to Nashville later will make a Make America Great Again rally in support of
ravaging the Baltimore region over the weekend, rushing water, toppling buildings, and upending cars in Ellicott City's historic district. In some areas, water levels reached above the first floor of buildings. Officials there are still searching for 39-year-old Sergeant Edison Hermond, a National Guardsman believed to have been swept away by the floods while trying to rescue someone else. Meanwhile, South Carolina storms turned deadly. A news anchor and photographer killed when a large tree fell on their SUV while they were covering subtropical storm Alberto.
First of all, it isn't the government. It's James Comey, Clapper, Brennan, the people who took this investigation and turned it on a candidate. Look, you can't say you're spying on the Russians if what you're trying to do is to show the Russians are colluding, whatever the hell that means, with the Trump campaign.
That was part of my conversation on Sunday with Rudy Giuliani, the former New York City mayor, taking aim at the Obama administration. He's saying the Russia probe is rigged, and the president tweeting this: why did not President Obama do something about the so-called Russian meddling when he was told about it by the FBI before the election? Because he thought crooked Hillary was going to win, and he did not want to upset the apple cart. He was in charge, not me, and did nothing. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano with me now. How you doing? Circuit day to you.
Good. It was a great interview you had.
Well, I appreciate that. He had a lot to say, as he always does. The essential question for Giuliani and President Trump now is, what was this informant / spy, to use their word, doing inside the campaign?
Right. Well, it depends on who you ask, and it depends on who you ask what you call the person. You know, if he's your guy, he's an informant. If he's the other side's guy, he's a spy. I mean, this is the way intel and non-violent criminal cases are investigated, by sending somebody into the group where you think something is going wrong and starting a conversation. This is unremarkable, and it happens all the time. If it was done to frustrate the Trump campaign or to learn intel about the Trump campaign and pass it on to Mrs. Clinton, obviously that's criminal and it's profoundly wrong. If it was done for the reasons the people Giuliani just listed said it was done, to try and find out if there was Russian influence in there, it's odd that they didn't tell Donald Trump or Steve Bannon, who was running the campaign.
Give him a heads up. I think if they were looking at Russia, you probably have a legitimate argument to say, hey, it's okay. if they were looking at other things. And this is what Republicans want to know. If you were looking at other things, we want to know. That's what I took away from Giuliani.
I agree with you. Those are the arguments that Giuliani is making, except these are speculative arguments. If there's evidence for it, we'd like to see it. Now, maybe there's evidence for it somewhere in Bob Mueller's files, and we won't see what's in Bob Mueller's files until he's required by law to show them to us, and he's not required by law to show them to us until he indicts somebody and uses evidence for that indictment that came from this spying, or until he exonerates somebody and ends his investigation.
A couple tweets from this morning is sharing with our viewers, okay? The 13 angry Democrats, plus people to work 8 years for Obama, working on the rigged Russia witch hunt, will be meddling with the midterm elections, especially now that Republicans stay tough and are taking the lead in polls. There was no collusion except by the Democrats. That is one. Here's another one. Do we have it? Tweet number 2. Sorry, I've got to start focusing my energy on the North Korea nuclear matter. Bad trade deals, VA choice, the economy, rebuilding the military, and so much more, and not on the rigged Russia witch hunt that should be investigating Clinton/Russia/FBI/Justice, Obama, Comey, Lynch, etc.
So
it goes on for there. I think my takeaway, Judge, is that there will not be an interview, at least in the near term, that I can see. And I can see Democrats using this against Republicans in the midterm because it will not happen.
Well, an interview would be profoundly ill-advised. The government doesn't interview you to benefit you. The government interviews you to benefit the government. Rudy Giuliani knows that, and I hope that the president knows it. Look, I want this thing over with like everybody else does. But Bob Mueller is faced with the legal equivalent of a 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and he ethically must fit in those pieces before he can start showing the puzzle.
Informant/spy could be a problem for Bob Mueller.
No, I don't. Because if it happened long before Bob Mueller was there. If it happened the way Giuliani claims it did, we're talking about the fall of 2016. Bob Mueller doesn't come on the scene until the May of 2017. And I have to take issue with their calling this rigged. The prosecutor's job is to prosecute and let judges and juries worry about fairness.
More to come.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sandra's got some news.
Breaking news this morning on a potential terror attack overseas, a deadly shooting leaving 3 dead, including 2 police officers. Where this happened and what police are now saying about the suspect.
Also, city of Chicago enduring a deadly Memorial Day weekend. 8 dead, 3 others shot in the span of 3 days. We're live with details on the South Side coming up. Will not seek re-election. Tom Garrett making the announcement over the weekend, citing his battle with alcoholism, saying he wants to renew his commitment to his family. His district is west of Richmond, Virginia. Garrett was set to face Democratic challenger Leslie Coburn.
Chicago police flooding the streets this holiday weekend with 1,000 extra police officers in an effort to prevent violence, but yet a very deadly weekend still unfolded. 8 killed, 39 others shot across the city, making it more deadly than last year's Memorial Day. Matt Finn joins us now live from our Chicago bureau. Matt?
Sandra, unfortunately, this level of violent crime and murder has just become par for the course here in Chicago over the Memorial Day weekend. Police began beefing up their patrols last week in anticipation. Let's take a quick look at the numbers this morning. Chicago police reporting 7 people were murdered between Friday and midnight last night. 29 people were shot. One incident that is considered accidental might end up being that 8th homicide. Compare that to last year over the Memorial Day weekend when 6 people were killed, 44 people shot, and 2016 Memorial Day weekend, one of the worst in decades. Preparing for this year's holiday weekend, last Thursday, the Chicago police, along with federal agencies, conducted raids in which they say they made 100 arrests and seized 30 illegal guns. However, Chicago's top cop says police can only do so much.
As a police executive, it's frustrating for me and the cops out on the street when we arrest these individuals for having illegal firearms, and then we see them back out the next week doing, guess what? Carrying another illegal firearm. That's a frustration for law enforcement all over this country.
Over the weekend here in Chicago, a young mother was shot and killed on her doorstep while she was celebrating her 2-year-old's birthday, and a 15-year-old boy was shot in the back in a separate incident. The answer to Chicago's violent crime depends on who you ask. As we just heard the police superintendent suggest, sentencings and courts might need to be stronger. Meanwhile, the state attorney's office here supports the concept of less jail time and more social services and programs. And at the end of the day, right now, the city of Chicago is removing more illegal guns from the streets than L.A. and New York combined. Sandra.
Yeah, a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness on the streets of that city. Thank you.
On and on it goes. In just a few hours, the president hits the campaign trail yet again. There is a bruising Senate fight in Tennessee. He hopes to boost Marsha Blackburn's chances there. And the Congresswoman will join us next with her reaction coming up. Plus, there's this. Have a look.
The lava won't stop in Hawaii. We have a live report from the Big Island as the lava flow destroys more homes there.
Big rush of lava broke through, it looks like through a perch pond, and subsequently it took out approximately 10 houses at this point, probably might be more.
President Trump heading to Nashville today, headlining a big rally for Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, one of his staunchest supporters. She's running for Senate as the GOP works to keep control of Congress. She's looking to replace Bob Corker, who announced he's retiring from the Senate back in September. But Blackburn has a tough battle ahead of her. Her opponent, Democrat and former Governor Phil Bredesen, has been gaining some momentum heading into these summer months. Joining us now is Tennessee Senate candidate and Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. Glad to have you on the program. A big day and a busy evening ahead of you. So how are things shaping up for you and your race?
Things are shaping up so well. We're really excited about the momentum that we're seeing all across the state. People will tell you tax cuts are working. They want to see more of them. They want to see more federal judges, and they're looking at that Supreme Court. They're pleased with President Trump's agenda. And Sandra, I've got to tell you, we are so pleased to have him with us in Nashville today. Big crowds are already forming at Municipal Auditorium. People have been camped out since late yesterday, and it's going to be a great day today in Tennessee.
Sounds like a lot of excitement indeed, Congresswoman. And I've got to address the most recent polling in the state, and this is the Real Clear Politics average. It's the average of 3 different polls in that state right now, and your opponent Bredesen is leading in that average. In a state where President Trump overwhelmingly won, 61% of the vote, why do you think that this is so close right now?
I think it is close because my opponent did serve as governor for 2 terms, and he has run statewide 3 times. This would be his 4th statewide race, and people are familiar with his name.
Interesting. You know, and obviously the president's heading down there tonight. You have embraced his policies. I think that you have voted in line with the president 90% of the time. There's some question about perhaps the overestimation of how conservative your state is. Where do you think things stand now compared to where voters were in 2016?
Well, I think what you do is go back and look at where voters were the last time my opponent ran statewide. And now you have our congressional delegation is primarily Republican. Our governor is Republican. You have supermajorities in the state house and the state senate. And by the way, most of those state reps and state senators have already endorsed my candidacy. And the state has changed quite a bit. We are a red state, and when that blue wave comes to Tennessee this year, if there is a blue wave, then it is going to run into what I call the Great Red Wall. It is the people of this state who are determined that we're not only going to win my Senate seat, we're going to win the governor's race, and we're going to keep those supermajorities in the state house and the state senate.
You know, I know a lot of this is going to come down to how women vote in your state, Congresswoman. This is something you are extremely in tune with. And in fact, at one point, I think you asked to be addressed as Congressman Blackburn, right? You wanted to undo the PC nature of the country, a lot that we've heard from the president as well. But your ability to win over the female vote right now in a state where Vanderbilt University says 54% of male Tennessee voters approve of Trump, over only 48% of female voters do. So how do you get women to come out and vote for you?
Women are focused primarily on a couple of things. And number one is the economic security issue. And they know that their lives are getting better every single day under the policies of Donald Trump. Tax cuts are working. More jobs are out there. They are seeing, so many of these communities are seeing broadband, high-speed internet come into their communities for the first time, and I have led that initiative on closing the digital divide for the last 5 years in Congress. Second thing is security in their communities, and they know that President Trump is committed to building a wall, securing that southern border, ending sanctuary city policies, and getting gangs out of our communities and off our streets. That is things that they support.
In fact, that is something you embrace along with the president. The president just tweeted this: repeal the GOP tax cuts. No chance. This is too good to be true for Republicans. Remember, the Nancy Pelosi Dems are also weak on crime, the border, and want to be gentle and kind to MS-13 gang members. Not good. This is something that you have campaigned hard on, and you aligned right up there with Donald Trump.
Yes, I do. And people want their communities, their children, their families to be safe. They want to know that when they go to college, when they go to public events, they're going to be safe. They want to know that gangs are not going to threaten their streets and their communities. So, and when it comes to the tax cuts, I got to tell you, Sandra, when you look at the way that tax cuts are working in Tennessee, jobs, growing jobs, wages increasing, unemployment is down. These are the policies people want to see more of, and I can't believe you would have somebody file a bill to try to repeal the tax cuts. These are helping to raise wages. You're seeing rising wages. You are seeing jobs growth. People are seeing companies expand. I was here in Tennessee in a manufacturing plant recently, and they were clearing out of space, bringing in new equipment, and adding a full third shift. That is the type of result people are wanting to see, and it's happening.
We'll see how it translates in the state. A lot of people watching this race to see how the president's popularity transfers. He's going to be there tonight for you. I know it's going to be an entertaining night as well. Trace Atkins is going to be kicking things off at that rally.
That's right.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you for your time.
Good to be with you. Bye-bye.
We'll be jump in Tennessee. Meanwhile, 3 weeks since Kilauea started erupting on the Big Island, lava flowing through neighborhoods, prompting a rescue over the holiday weekend. Emergency officials there urging people to heed evacuations orders. Jeff Paul, live on the Big Island, to tell us about the progress of the slow-moving lava. Jeff, how's it going?
Hi, Bill. Well, yeah, the Kilauea volcano seems to be showing no signs of slowing down here on the Big Island of Hawaii. In fact, the lava flows are growing deeper, wider, and speeding up at times without really any notice for the folks who live in some of these hard-hit neighborhoods. And as you take a look at this new areas that we're getting in right now, you can see that lava pools are starting to form. Geologists estimate the fountains of lava are shooting up and reaching heights of about 200 feet. We're also learning at least 10 additional homes were destroyed within Leilani Estates, one of the hardest hit subdivisions. Civil defense officials are now going door to door to warn those who stayed behind that this situation is only getting worse.
What I actually saw was an ocean of lava. Instead of rivers and lakes, this was an ocean with waves in it, and wave after wave came in.
Geologists say there are 8 fissures actively erupting and pumping out lava. Hawaii County's mayor giving a blunt warning to those who haven't left to get out now. We're also learning that early this morning around 2 a.m. Hawaii time, there was a small explosion at the summit of Kilauea. It sent ash into the air by about 15,000 feet. So those who are downwind now have to worry about ash.
Wow.
Bill.
Thank you, Chris. Back on the Big Island there. We'll watch it along with us. Thank you, sir.
Well, the Golden State Warriors heading back to the NBA Finals, topping the Houston Rockets in the West Conference Championship. Deja vu for the Rockets and their fans. After blowing a double-digit lead in Game 6, they turn around and do it again in Game 7. The Rockets missing an NBA record 27 straight three-point attempts. That gave the Warriors the chance to come back. So the NBA Finals Looking awfully familiar for the fourth straight year. Warriors and Cavs, game 1 Thursday night. I will take the, can I go first?
You do whatever you want, yeah.
I'll go take the Golden State Warriors.
Okay, I think it's a good choice. I'll take the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I figured you would,
I think it's an absolute coin flip, don't you think so?
Shocker.
I mean, don't you think it's a coin flip? I think these two teams are so really evenly matched after a great season.
Cavs, they're still the underdogs, though.
Are they?
I think. Ben?
Check the Vegas line.
Anything?
By the way, I call Jeff Paul Chris Paul. Chris Paul plays for the Houston Rockets.
Golden State Warriors, right?
Won't happen again.
Yeah, they're big favorites.
So we'll see how we go. I mean, Game 7. I mean, both of these series are really good the other night. Okay, you got the Warriors?
Yep. Yes, sir.
I got the Cavs. Play on Thursday night. Meanwhile, a middle school teacher, have you heard this story? He becomes a lifesaver.
I deeply care for my students and their well-being, so that is why I did what I did that day.
How he stopped what could have become another school shooting tragedy. His story coming up.
Plus, disturbing photos showing immigrant children being held in cages. Well, they have gone viral. The problem? They're 4 years old.
Are you a veteran and need money?
As a hero for preventing a school shooting. He was shot 3 times while tackling an armed student who opened fire inside a middle school classroom. Science teacher Jason Seaman says he took the only acceptable actions to save his students.
My actions on that day, in my mind, were the only acceptable actions I could have done given the circumstances. I can't say enough how proud of Ella I am and how we all should be. Her courage and strength at such a young age is nothing short of remarkable, and we should all continue to keep her in our minds as she continues to recover.
Well, he was referencing 13-year-old Ella Whistler, who was critically wounded in the attack, and she is now listed in stable condition.
Hope the best for her, huh?
And thank you to him for his actions.
Remarkable stuff there. That's right, from Indiana. All right, have a listen here. Kellyanne Conway this morning.
Excuse me, your CNN colleague retweeted 2 migrant children, I suppose, laying in a cage to make the point against this president. It happened under President Obama's watch, and then deleted the tweet because it didn't fit the narrative. Do you or do you not care about the migrant children?
What she's talking about is a story that developed over the weekend. Here's the story. Photos showing children in cages made their rounds online. Liberal activists blaming the Trump team, but the pictures are actually 4 years old. They're from 2014. The president tweeting this. Democrats mistakenly tweet 2014 pictures from Obama's term showing children from the border in steel cages. They thought it was recent pictures in order to make us look bad, but backfires. Dems must agree to wall a new border protection for good of country bipartisan bill. Marie Harf, former State Department spokesperson for Fox News analyst, and Guy Benson, political editor, townhall.com, and a Fox News contributor and co-host of Benson and Harf on radio. How you guys doing? Good morning to both of you.
Hey, Bill. Good morning.
I don't know, Marie, can you defend this? Don't retweet that which you do not know. That would be the advice.
Well, that's why I'm not on Twitter, first of all. But you're right. Activists need to be very careful when they retweet photos, when they promote certain things online. That should go without saying. But the reason the president is focusing on this is to distract from the fact that it is his administration that made it U.S. policy to separate mothers from their children. Jeff Sessions announced that policy in a visit to the border a few weeks ago. And that since October, this administration has separated 800 children from their mothers. So, yes, the tweet was incorrect, but the bigger picture here is that the Trump administration has made it U.S. policy to separate mothers from their children, something I think is barbaric, and that should end.
Here's Jeff Sessions, Attorney General. Just skip a few up there, guys. Jeff Sessions said this on the 7th of May. Watch.
If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you. And that child may be separated from you as required by law.
As required by law. Back to the point, Guy.
Yeah, so first of all, on to the tweet point. I think that sometimes when you're on Twitter, you're scrolling through, you might retweet something that you see without verifying it. And if you do that and you get it wrong, you shouldn't just memory hole it. You should acknowledge the mistake, delete the tweet, and put a new one up explaining why you deleted it. And it does seem like if you were really outraged about kids in cages because Trump, and then all of a sudden, oh, it wasn't Trump, it was Obama. Let me delete that and move on with my life. It seems like you're using the kids in cages as a cudgel politically against a president that you detest as opposed to caring.
That's the proper way to treat it. All right, here's Sean King, well-known liberal, tweeted this. I saw this photo flying around, didn't know if it was real. It is. Children of immigrants are being held in cages like dogs at ICE detention centers, sleeping on the floor. It's an abomination. Whoops. John Favreau, who used to work for the Obama administration, sent this out. This is happening right now, and the only debate that matters is how we force our government to get these kids back to their families as fast as humanly possible. I'm told since then John has deleted that. Marie.
Yeah, and Guy is right. When people make mistakes online, they should admit it and they should fix it. And I can tell you that there were people inside the Obama administration who were working very hard on these issues because they did not like some of what was happening, just like you just referenced. But the point today, Bill, is that the president's trying to distract from the fact that his administration has taken very barbaric immigration policies that were not policy in the previous administration. They have separated 800 children from their mothers since October. That is not a family-centric policy that conservatives like to talk about. So let's focus on where the kids are today. Where are these 1,500 kids that the government can't find? You would agree
that these folks online were trying to make the administration look bad?
Of course they were, but that's not the point. I mean, today the Trump administration is in charge.
What I would point out is it was U.S. policy to separate, in some cases, families and parents from their children. It happened under the Obama administration. What the Trump administration has done is said, we are now going to have a zero tolerance policy and apply this to every case of new illegal border crossings. You might disagree with that, but the idea that it is totally barbaric and totally on the Trump administration takes agency and responsibility away from the grown adults who are making the conscious decision to violate our laws and enter our country illegally, for which there have to be consequences. I don't want to see families ripped apart, but I also want to see our border under control and secure, which it is not right now.
Appreciate the debate from both of you. Come on back, okay? Marie, Guy, I hope the radio show is going well. I'm sure it is.
Thank you, Bill. It is.
Thanks, Bill.
Lots of love. See you guys. Sandra.
Still ahead, Starbucks shutting down thousands of stores across the country today. We'll tell you why next.
Also, hundreds of supporters embracing Josh Holt and his wife after his release from a Venezuelan jail. Details on his 2-year ordeal coming up next.
It's time.
Today, thousands of Starbucks stores nationwide will close their doors to conduct a racial bias education program. This comes after the arrest of 2 black men in a Starbucks in April set off a wave of protests against the coffee giant. Brian Yanis is live in Philadelphia, where it all happened. Brian?
Good morning, Sandra. We are at the Starbucks where in April the store manager called the police on 2 black men for sitting in the cafe without purchasing something. Starbucks apologized for the incident, and today this store, along with 8,000 others, will close from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. so that their employees can undergo racial bias training. 175,000 employees will watch these training videos today. The videos will include cameos by Starbucks CEO Kevin Johnson and the rapper Common. Today's training was created with the help of civil rights organizations like the NAACP. Employees will break up into groups and they'll have discussions on racial bias. They'll share personal experiences and even reflect on the history of racial discrimination in public places. Starbucks founder Howard Schultz says this is about making everyone feel like they belong in public spaces. He spoke today on CBS This Morning.
We all have had a life experience, and that life experience has provided us with a level of understanding that may be different than the level of understanding you have. And it doesn't have to be about race. It could be about ethnic background, sexual orientation, your station in life, but it's all about trying to provide a level of empathy and compassion, a new level of sensitivity.
You'll remember back on April 12th, a Starbucks manager called the police on Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson as they waited to meet a business partner. Police arrested them for trespassing. The 2 men settled with the city of Philadelphia for a symbolic $1 each, and a $200,000 grant was set up in their honor for young entrepreneurs. Now, the incident led to protests. Starbucks says today's racial bias training day is just the beginning. The company plans on making the training global and opening more stores in underserved minority minority communities. Starbucks is also, they've changed their policy since the incident. They now allow everyone to use their cafe and restrooms without the need for purchasing something. And by the way, Sandra, Starbucks stands to lose $12 million for closing their doors today for 4 hours.
That's no small sum of money. Brian Yanis, thank you. 8,000 stores, a big commitment for Starbucks to make that, considering that number right there. That's a big loss for them as
Interesting
well.
approach too. You can go to any Starbucks in any major American city, and they've got problems. The homeless hang out there. When the weather changes, they get more and more of this. I was home in Ohio and just seeing some of that in person. I mean, you need to have a policy, and you've got so many workers who have to deal with it, so many stores. This is not easy.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they say today this afternoon. All right, here we go. New signs that the North Korea summit could still take place. We confirm a top North Korean official is en route to the U.S. for talks ahead of next month's potential meeting. More on that. Plus, for the second time in less than 2 weeks, the people of this Maryland town are forced to get out and then come back to a town that is left in ruin. We're live on the scene to tell you what happened here.